Okay, ready for a weird one? This is Mishlei 1319. This will be the last year before we break temporarily for Pesach. Tava nihia terav lenafesh v'toavas ksilim surmera. And the only weird word here is nihia. And there are two translations there. So anyone want to try tackling it here?
If you send me this link, desire.
Yeah. So nihia is one option is it's from haya, which to be, and the BDB says it means to come to pass or to realize, like to be like actualized. But this will be a big question. Yeah.
It sounds like it's like the future tense of haya, which is weird.
I think it's the passive of haya
Interesting.
that was actualized.
Okay.
So let's just say that for now. Desire, or let's say realize. You'll say actualized.
Mix Terav Lanofich mixes up the soul.
So good question. So this is from Arev. Like click on it here just to show you what the BDB says. Terav is to be sweet or pleasing. Okay, so desire actualized will be sweet to the soul.
An abomination, the abomination of sealing of fools turns from evil.
Is turning from evil.
Is turning from evil.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how I would translate it. But then we're going to see a little bit of a discrepancy here. So we got Metzudas Tzion says nihia means inyan shavira. It means to be broken. Okay, so he translates it as desire broken. And then terav is sweet, okay, to the soul. Okay, Sadia Gaon says ata mote, you will find, or you find hatava hamiyadis, that immediate desire, neges es hanefesh, brings enjoyment to the soul. Ulfikach, and therefore, mitavim haksilim es haprisha min hara, the fools, I guess, abhor separating from evil, I guess abstaining from evil. Okay. So he adds in a therefore there, which kind of makes sense. Okay. And then the Targum says rigasa de ya'aya. Okay, now rigasa is the word for tava, and just a fun fact here. The Ramban, I believe, I don't know if this is his own idea or if he's quoting something, says that rigata is the shoresh of esrog. So esrog is like a desirable fruit. So like tava. So rigata de ya'aya, and ya'aya means fitting, right, or nice. And the Jastro quotes our pasuk here saying Mishlei 13:19. So I guess I don't know, like desire that is fitting or nice. Tivasim nafsha, like bisamim, like it brings, I guess pleasantness, literally, like I guess fragrance, right? Bosem to the soul. Umarachakta desachle, but, and this is a strange one also, but an abomination of fools is prika min yadiasa, is casting off knowledge. Don't know where the Targum gets that from. Okay, fine. And then we got our English translations. Arcturus says lust broken is sweet to the soul. So they're going with the Metzudas David. Okay, so I'm just going to delete the Metzudas David because we have that represented in the art school. But turning from evil is an abomination for fools. Rav Hirsch says conquering a lust is a comfort to the soul. So he also seems to be saying broken. But I guess he's saying breaking, like breaking a horse, like taming it is sweet to the soul, but turning from evil is an abomination for fools. And then Alter says desire fulfilled is sweet to the palate, but fool's loathing is swerving from evil. And if you're wondering where he gets palate from, so he theorizes, he says the Hebrew nefesh would literally be throat. He says that a lot. I don't know where he gets that nefesh as throat. I've never seen that throat before, so whatever. or at least that is the meaning assumed here because of the verb ye'erav is sweet, but it could also mean to the essential being. Okay, I'm gonna ignore him because I don't know where he's getting it from. Okay, so we have here. I'm just gonna put our translation here. Okay, so we've got a couple competing translations. So we've got our translation: desire, actualize, will be sweet to the soul, and the abomination of fools is turning from evil. Sadigon adds in the words immediate and therefore. So immediate desire brings enjoyment to the soul, and therefore, and I guess it might mean that it might be that he's getting immediate from the word nihia, which means like to be. So like desire that is, meaning present desire, basically, brings enjoyment to the soul, and therefore fools abstaining from evil. Okay, so that last half is pretty good. Again, I don't know where the Targum is getting it from. Our scroll says lust broken, and Rav says conquering a lust. Okay, so we kind of have our pick here of which translations we want to do. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this into the chat, just so we have the translations. Okay, so first here are the those translations, and then we have our with the pasuk. Okay, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and just list our first question, which is, what does ta'ava nihia mean? Okay, so does it mean immediate desire, broken desire, conquered desire, or something else? Okay, and I think I think those are like the or I guess sorry, actualized desire. I think those are our four options. Actualized desire. I'm gonna go ahead and transliterate this. Ta'ava nihia. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, so that's our first question. Hold on just a second. I'm actually going to, since Rifki just got on and I just posted the translations, I'm gonna go ahead and just send them to her separately. So those are the translations there, and these are the translations here. Okay. Yeah, so who had a question? Ayala.
So what is the relationship between the two halves of the pasuk? Are they opposites or like
Okay, that's
Sadiagon, I guess not?
right. What is the relationship between the two halves? Okay, are they opposites like normal, or are they I guess a line of reasoning like Sadion, or something else? Ariel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the easiest way to say this question is what the heck is this pasuk talking about? Yeah, it's just like it's like I mean like desire actually will be sweet to the soul. What does that even mean? Like in terms of like why do we care about desire so much, and like in what way is it sweet to the soul, and like
Okay, so I'll just say, what is the subject of this pasuk? And then I also want to say, yeah, what about desire? This is I guess this is kind of connected. So I'm going to make this closer here. What about desire is sweet to the soul, and why do we care? Right. So if it's saying actualize the desire sweet to the soul, so then like, yeah, we know, right? We know that when you get your desire, then that's sweet to the soul. Or immediate desire, yeah, we know that that's sweet to the soul. And that's what Sadigon seems to be trying to answer, because he's saying, therefore fools hate evil. And then if it's broken desire, like, what does that mean? And is that true? Is conquered desire sweet to the soul? Like, it sounds like you're depriving yourself.
yeah, and
So
also like what makes them sweet to the soul? Like
yeah, right.
you
What
know.
makes this the case? Yeah. Okay, right. So this is going to be part of our question. I don't even know. Maybe this is all one question, but yeah, Ayala.
Also, just adding on to the same question, just what would sweet to the soul mean?
Mhm.
Because it seems like we're deciding like whatever translating, I guess, is like pleasurable kind of, but can it mean anything else?
Yeah, right. I guess we also have to ask, what does nefesh, soul, mean in this context? So we know nefesh can sometimes mean, is this the instinctual, like animalistic soul, or the the intellect, slash human soul, or like something else? Yeah. Yeah, see, this is one of, okay, how do I want to put this? there are certain psukim that are like, I mean, we had psukim like this, but they're like kind of crossroads psukim where you kind of have to take a stance on what angle you want to take, and then like it'll follow from that. Like, we have several moving parts. We have, is this talking about fulfilling desire, in which case it's probably the animal soul? Is this talking about conquering desire, in which case maybe it's the other soul? Like we have to take a stance here. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, and the abomination of fool is turning from evil. Isn't like why highlight the fool here? Meaning, like it seems like it would be an abomination from everyone to turn from evil. Like what's unique about the fool?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so why? 1 second. Google.
And also, what does it mean? Exactly.
Yeah. So okay, what does it mean that by an abomination of fools is turning from evil, and then why specifically a fool? Yeah, Rivki.
So thanks for sending the stuff to me, first
Yeah.
of all. And then I guess like similar to what Arlo was just saying. Sorry, I'm just asking a question. I'm wondering why in one half is it seal and the other half there's no specific
Oh, that's a
person.
good question.
Like the other half I would assume would be like nefesh, but nefesh isn't like a character.
Okay, right. So who is I guess given the fact that the second half is talking about a seal, okay, so a mishleic fool, why doesn't the first half specify a type of person? Who is the first half talking about? Everyone or someone specific? Yeah, Isaiah?
Is the second half talking about a good thing or a bad thing?
Right. Well, I really think you can ask that about both halves.
Well, you might be able to. That's fair. I was
Which
thinking like Thor Meirah, like is usually a good thing to turn away from evil.
right. So it
So
seems like it is turning away from evil is good, and the fact that it's an abomination for fools is bad, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess maybe my question is it a toeva of a kasilim or a toeva that is it a toeva in the eyes of kasilim?
What's the first one? Because I understand.
A toeva that kasilim do.
Sorry, say it one more time.
Is it like a toeva that kasilim like cause, like meaning they cause an abomination and therefore it's a bad thing, or is it a
No, I
toeva?
think shot is
there?
that for them it is an abomination to turn away from evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
we should still ask though, like, what is the good? I guess I mean I feel like this is actually part of this question, question 7, which is like, is one half of this pasuk good and the other bad, or are these both bad? I think. I don't know if that's the best way to ask it. Yeah, my mom is next.
I'm thinking about the connotation and the levels of and relationship of lust and desire. Is desire lust is a has a negative connotation. Desire is not necessarily negative. And
Yeah.
the other question is, what is the mechanism for breaking desire? How do you
Okay.
do that?
All right. So let me first say what is meant by ta'ava in this context. So is it desire, lust, or lust? What is the nature of this ta'ava? Okay. Is it like good, bad, neutral? And then 3, how is ta'ava nihya? How is it however we want to translate that, like actualized, immediate, broken, conquered? What is the mechanism? Yeah, difficult so far. Okay, Ariel?
Yeah, what's the scenario here?
Yeah. What is the decision-making scenario here? Yeah. Difficult. Okay, Ayala?
Okay, I have 2 smaller stylistic questions. So the
Yeah.
first is, why use the word soavas? Like it seems like a strong word, like the abomination of
Yeah.
fools.
Okay, so
So just like what is meant
I'm
by
gonna
that?
go ahead and tack that on here. And why use abomination, which is the strongest word you can use? Yeah.
And then just a smaller, like I don't even know if this is a question, but can we make anything of the fact like tava and soavas like a stylistic thing,
Oh,
or is that just like a
yeah.
choice?
No, that sounds poetic, right? It's yeah. I'd say yeah. I don't know if we're gonna get an idea from there, but it's a good observation though. Yeah, tava nihil tarav lanefesh. Yeah, hold on a second. But 12 us kasilim rav. I'm trying to think if there's any more. Yeah, because you got other similar sounds in there also, like ta'ava, te'arav, toava, sumira. You know, yeah, we'll leave that to the literary people to extract stuff, but it's a good observation. All right, yeah. Next is my dad.
You may have already answered this. Just the definition of abomination. Is this just a description of a special category of sin?
Yeah. Hold on just 1 second. Desire or lust. Well, abomination is talking about their reaction to it. So are you asking? Are you asking about the abomination or about the evil?
I don't know what this means, the abomination of fools. I don't know what would, how do, if I looked at a fool, how would I know he was abominated?
Okay. Yeah, so I'll ask it that way then. Practically speaking, what is the ramification of the fact that turning from evil is an abomination of fools? Right? Like how does this manifest itself in behavior? Okay, that's good. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What I was going to ask is maybe like really along that, like, what is this pasuk doing in Mishlei?
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think someone was just being said, but like definitely the first half, like something being sweet to the soul. I mean, as far as like Mishlei, I mean, if we're talking about like straight like practical decision making, saying that something is pleasurable is not a decision making, like a how to make good decisions advice,
Right.
if you may.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and include that in our usual. What is the practical decision making application, especially for the first half, which seems to just be stating a fact about what provides pleasure. Yeah. Okay, Ariel?
Yeah, just a couple questions. One is usually well in the first half of the pasuk, who is the pasuk talking to? Like exactly.
Who's it talking
And
to?
in the first half of the pasuk, and it'll make sense with my second question.
Okay.
Like what's the opposite of a ksil?
Right. Yeah. So you got a lot of opposites of ksil. Like it could be a chacham.
Right.
Sometimes it's a navon.
So
Yeah.
is there a significance in not mentioning the opposite in the first half?
Right.
Is my
That's
question.
what I forgot who asked this. Who's the first half talking about? Is it everyone or is it someone specific? And why doesn't the first
Okay.
half specify a person? Yeah.
My bad.
My question, I don't know if this was in one of the other questions, but who is an abomination to? Because I know we said, what does it mean? But I feel like
So it's abomination to the fools.
the fools, so it's on the fools.
Yeah. I think that's pshat. I don't know any other way to read it. Meaning they find it abominable to turn away from evil.
Oh, okay. So that completely changes what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah. Is there another way to read it? I just don't see another way to read
I
it.
don't have no grammar.
Okay. Ayala?
So I don't think we asked this before, but what exactly does sormera mean?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
what is the raw that they're turning away from and how do they do that?
Okay, yeah. So what, let's see here. What does turning away from evil mean? Okay, what type of evil? What does turning away entail? And did you say something else? No, okay. All right, yeah, we did not ask that. Isaiah or David?
Yeah, going with question 5, Nihia, is that to say that it's not in the present? I don't know if anybody asked that earlier. Is that like only in the future this is going to be?
Yeah, so I don't know enough about grammar to say. I
Okay.
think some of the Mepharshim do talk about it. Like, I'll just read it to you from the Hoyel Moshe. He says, Nihya is Benoni Nekeva Mibinya Nifal. So it's I know what Nifal means, but I don't know what the implications are of it being that. So it's passive. That's all I can tell you. Yeah. Okay, I think we got. Oh no, my dad has another question.
Yeah, this may be like a sort of a methodology question. Does Mishlei sometimes make things ambiguous on purpose? I
Yes.
mean, this is the most ambiguous
Yeah.
pasuk I've ever seen.
Yeah. So my current view on Mishlei's deliberate ambiguity is that we know that Mishlei can be read on at least 2 levels. Okay, there is the I'm just gonna go ahead and read this because we haven't reviewed this in a while. Okay, so there's a pasuk that Ramam identifies as like one of the key methodology points of Mishlei, which is Mishlei 25:11. Tapuche zahav b'maskios kasef davar davur al ofenav, which means apples or fruit, golden apples encased in silver lattice work is a statement that is formulated properly. So the mashal here is that every pasuk in Mishlei is like a golden apple with silver lattice work. And when you're comparing gold and silver, the gold is the more valuable one and the silver is the less valuable. And lattice work is something that is an encasement, but you can see the gold through it. So everyone seems to hold that on Mishlei could be learned on 2 levels. It could be learned on the silver level or on the gold level, or if you want to say the external and the internal. The external level is the way we typically learn Mishlei, which is learning it about everyday decision making in terms of getting maximum pleasure and minimum pain in terms of like the decisions and the results, okay, benefits and consequences. But then that's the silver level, that's the external level, that's what Miri calls the derech nigla. Then there's the derech nister, the internal level or the gold level, where you're learning it to be an idea about how to perfect your soul. Okay. And so at the very least, there are 2 levels, and there might even be more. I've seen, for example, that there's a way to learn Mishlei where you can learn it for the fool, like it's talking to the simpleton, or to the youth, or to the chacham, or to the understanding person. So there's at least 2 levels. And one of the tools he uses is deliberate ambiguity, where he uses words that he could have stated this in a simpler way by using an unequivocal term, but he uses an equivocal term that could be read in different ways, so that you can get different ideas out of it. So it's unlike an American proverb. An American proverb wants to be as simple and as possible, so you can like spoon feed someone an idea without them thinking about it. But a Shlomo proverb is multi-leveled, and also he's trying to teach you how to analyze. So he wants to make it in a way where you have to like decode it. It's like a puzzle. And there are other cultures where proverbs are like that. Like I don't know this firsthand, but like a Zen koan, is like almost like a riddle where like it's supposed to be cryptic and you get the benefit out of like working on it and like thinking about it and decoding it. So same thing with Mishlei. So I guess what I'm saying is like there's two benefits. One is he can incorporate more ideas in deliberate ambiguity, and second is that it forces you to do the workout of like analyzing it, and you get the benefit from the analysis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it is definitely a confusing one. Okay, so let's do this. Actually, what I want to do, I just want to hold on just 1 second here. I just want to paste the pasuk with all the translations of Nihya. So actualized, immediate, broken, and conquered. So I'm just going to recopy and paste the translation of the pasuk. Okay, and then I'm going to copy and paste the questions. I think we're going to definitely need at least 2 copies and pastes here, if not 3. Okay, so here's 1 set of questions, and then we need 8 through 13. I'm just going to go change all the numbers. 8 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Okay, and now let us take our minute to think. And what I'm going to advise, this is one of these pasukim where if you're going to state your idea, begin your idea by telling me which of these translations you're using, because I think that's going to be, a crossroads. All right, let's start with Isaiah. What you got?
All right, so I'm thinking about this as like the first half is teaching you a fact, not really teaching, it's telling you about a fact. The second half is telling you like a chiddush about ksilim.
Okay.
First half is telling you that like when you get when it actualized. So when when a desire is actualized, like it's sweet to the soul, meaning it's like a good experience. Like having an actualized desire is like a nice thing to have happen. But what happens to a ksil is that they view like that as like the good, and they view like having to forego that experience as like an abomin, because they don't have an understanding of what true good is. So they view like turning away from like immediate pleasure as an actual abominable thing, like a thing that has a taboo against it, a thing that's like bad to do. So they don't turn away from, they never turn away from Rob, even so they'll go for any pleasure, whether it's good or bad. Like they're
Okay, right.
just wired to go for pleasure.
Okay. Yeah, so let's let's actually just think about that, because that on the surface definitely fits the words of the pasuk. It sounds obvious. So the question is, what's the havamina? Why do we need to be told this? What might you think? That's a question for anyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe if you assume that the fool is not going to be as foolish as fools are, and that they could be like two level, maybe they really like they're foolish insofar as their ultimate value, but at the very least they'll be smart about it. And I think maybe this could be like fools are even foolish insofar as like how to like whether or not what they're going into is a smart thing to get into or not.
Okay, so in other words, maybe you'll overestimate the fool, thinking that he'll engage in a cost benefit analysis to determine whether it's worthwhile to pursue the pleasure or at the cost of the consequence or not. But Mishlei is telling you that the immediate pleasure, this actually does fit in well with Sadigon, right? You find that immediate pleasure brings enjoyment to the soul, and therefore the fool is abhor from abstaining from evil. So that the immediate pleasure is so much the pinnacle of what life is about, according to them, that they can't conceive of there being any good in turning away from that. And this is what gets them into trouble. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna just really quickly, since Yosef just joined, I'm gonna just copy and paste the translations because there's so many. I'll just put it into the chat again. Okay. All right, that's a good idea, and I think that fits into Sadigon. I'm gonna just make a note here. This is Sadigon. Okay, Ariel.
Okay, I my idea may seem similar to Isaiah, but I'm not sure if I want to say what he's saying.
Okay, so start off and then we'll differentiate.
So I want to say that the nia means it's actualized, like like normally like everyone, like the fact is everyone has desires. Okay, that's just a fact, and And when we fulfill those desires, when those desires are actualized, that feels good.
Right.
That's just the reality. So that's a fact. Same Isaiah, right? But I think maybe you could say that the Ra here is that people can get, but more than that desire is the fantasy of that desire, or
Okay.
like want to like if you even if you have the desire and you want more and more and more of that desire because it doesn't satisfy your psychology or whatever it is, like that's dangerous. That's rich. That in itself is evil because like you shouldn't live in the fantasy of desires,
Okay.
right? And I think maybe like it's sweet to the nefesh because it's not gonna hurt you. It's not harmful to you. It's like you're once your desire is fulfilled, like it's good for you because you can focus on other things that is important instead of just being trapped into that the fantasy of the desire. And I think you know the fool may not recognize that or something, or he doesn't want to go away from that. I don't know.
Okay,
But
so I
it's
understand
kind
the
of
first half
simple,
of what you're saying, and I do think that the first half is similar to Isaiah. Where are you seeing in the pasuk that it's talking about the fantasizing about it? Because I think
well,
yeah.
I'm getting from the first half. I'm just trying to understand the second half, and to me, like the cases have to be somewhat similar. So
Yeah.
I guess the subject of the pasuk is, like meaning the hava. Maybe you could say the havamina is that thinking about the desire or fantasizing about the desire is not an issue, but really it is an issue.
Okay, so maybe
Meaning,
there's an unstated thing that I'm missing here, but are you making the move and saying that when because you started off saying everyone has desires and fulfilling desire feels good. So I would have said that that's not fantasy. That's just like normal satisfaction of an emotion feels good. Are you saying from the fact that it says it's sweet to the soul that that's where it's talking about the fantasy? Like I don't. Where are you getting the fantasy part from?
I'm trying to explain what's ricious about that.
Where do you see ricious?
Well, evil, raw. I'm sorry, raw.
Okay, raw. Okay.
Right. So if you take the same exact case and with two different people viewing desire,
Yeah.
there are two elements of desires of taiva. One is it being actualized, and the other is it not being actualized, and you're in the fantasy world of the desire.
Okay.
Meaning, if you're in the fantasy world of desires, that's dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is raw. But if you just have desires for the sake of fulfilling the desires, that's in line with reality. That's what you're supposed to do, and that's good.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying. I think there are two things that are bad about the desires themselves. One is the fantasy about it removes you from reality, but the other thing, which I think is more Mishleic, is like, a lot of the desires when you give into it, it feels good, but it does have consequences. So isn't that a more normal? Like, isn't that not more normal? Isn't that a more like immediate like standard case of why living life of just trying to fulfill every desire you have is going to be bad? Like, yeah, it's true that you get involved in fantasies and stuff, but like primarily, like, yeah, it does feel really good to like, steal money and like spend it, but like then I get consequences for that.
Yeah,
Like,
but I mean, we're talking about I mean, yeah, if you're gonna bring an extreme case, yeah, a desire to steal money. I'm not talking about that case. I mean, of course, that's bad, but I'm just saying like a desire for food or a desire for I don't know. I don't know. Take any desire. I don't know. Let's say you're
Drugs.
well, no, not drugs, because there are certain desires that's intrinsically bad for you. Okay, but there are other desires where it's not bad for you. It's just if you indulge in it, it's problematic.
what I don't see the distinction because I thought you were saying earlier that the desire itself, I thought you were trying to break off the desire from the fantasies and then break off the desire from the consequences and saying
All
like
right,
there's
fine.
nothing wrong with just the
Here's a
pleasure
good
itself.
example.
Okay.
Bia. Okay. Bia
is
in
sexual pleasure.
itself, if it's done appropriately, it's okay. Right?
Okay.
Like that is a desire. Once you fulfill it, then you've accomplished its purpose.
Okay.
For whatever purpose it is. Okay. But then you could have another individual who fantasizes about it a lot, and that fantasy of doing it is dangerous to the individual, and he's not satisfied about it just being fulfilled. It's like a step. It's a step removed from the fulfillment of it. If you just fulfill it and you're okay with it, that's fine. That's just normal. I mean, that's what you should do. That's that's called being aligned with reality. But the other side, the danger, I'm talking about a normal case, not anything extreme.
Okay, think about it a little bit more, because I'm not seeing. I'm seeing the individual parts of your idea. I'm not really seeing where this is in the pasuk. I'm not seeing the unity. I'm gonna move on to someone else, then we can come back if need be. Okay, Rivki, you're up.
Okay, so I hope I get this straight, because now I'm like, a little.
Okay.
So I think I was thinking about the translation of conquered. I thought that was a really interesting way to go.
Okay.
And what I think of when I think of the word conquered is like that you achieved like whatever you were, I guess, like wanting to achieve, or that you like won over that thing. So I think like those are like the two ways that I was thinking
Give me
about
an
it.
example, because those are two very vague terms. Can you just give me an example to work with?
Okay, so like I was thinking about it in terms of desires. So specifically, like let's say you can have a desire that you know is bad for you, but if you conquer that desire, that can go like one of two ways. It could be either that you abstain from that because you know it's not good for you as a person, or it could be that you win over it in a way that you're able to do it in a, I guess, like quote unquote healthy manner. So those are the two ways I was thinking about in terms of conquered. And that's why
so you either succeed in resisting the temptation to give into it, or you find a way to give into it which is not detrimental. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. And then that's why the consequence of that is that it will be sweet to the soul, because I think like what Ariel was trying to say is where that comes in is like, if it's bad for you, it's not going to be sweet to the soul. And that's like literally the entire book of Koheles. Because at the end of the day, it might be good, quote unquote, for immediate pleasure, but it's not going to actually give you the satisfaction that you want and the satisfaction that your soul actually like craves. So that's for the first half.
Okay, so in the sense that your soul will be in a state of enjoyment. Okay, so either because you didn't harm it by giving in to the desire, or because you found a way to engage the desire, in a realistic manner. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it also like gives you a sense of growth. Like I think it's not only sweet, and I know he's not saying that explicitly, but I think that you really like grow from it. And then the second half I think is like very similar to Isaiah's second half. And I was thinking that the Havamina would be that I don't remember when at what point I read this with you, but I know that you gave us an essay to read that was essentially about pleasure from one of the philosophers. I don't know where it was from, but basically that like you might think that all pleasure is good, or maybe it wasn't a philosopher, maybe it was more modern, but you might think that all pleasure is good, and that's why you would just indulge in everything because it feels good to you. But then when you really think about it, you realize that no, just because something feels good to me doesn't mean it's actually going to be good for me. Like there are certain categories in life that feel good in the beginning, but actually aren't good for you. Like obviously, if you eat, let's say like 70 pounds of chocolate in a week, that's not going to be good for you. But if you have like a few bites here and there, like that's fine. Like that's indulging in a healthy manner that won't be detrimental, and you're still getting that like quote unquote sweetness to the soul. And obviously you're not necessarily going to grow from that, but if you do it in a way, like anything could be an opportunity for that. So yeah.
Right. Okay. So let me just give you I think where you can get the growth from, because I would not say that that the first half of the pasuk is really showing you that your soul grows from it, but I think that the second half, the inverse of the second half, shows that you are benefited from it. Like the fools don't turn away from evil, But the first half is saying that not only do you get pleasure from conquering the desire, but you actually like get benefit from conquering the desire. Yeah.
Yeah. And also I think, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say also like that he uses like such a strong word as raw because it shows you like exactly what I'm trying to say the Havamina is, because you might think like I think it's for a person that might fall into the category of a kasil. Because if you say like, oh, like raw, it's not saying that it's something, it's actually telling you like this is bad. Like you might think that it's fine, but it's actually really bad for you.
Okay. All right. So here's my okay. I like the approach. I'm just trying to differentiate it. I'm just trying to see what the unifying idea is here, right? So the pasuk is talking to someone who wants pleasure, okay, and Mishlei is telling them that that there's nothing wrong with wanting pleasure because pleasure feels good, but you need to do it in a way. There is a more pleasurable way to engage in it, which is a way that will not be mixed with harm and will also be realistic instead of having a fantasy that you don't that the experience doesn't live up to. So that's like the first half. And then if you just engage in a lifestyle where any immediate pleasure is synonymous with the good, so then you're going to miss out on all those pleasures in the first half, and you're going to be causing yourself harm because you're not going to be turning away from things that are actually harmful for you. Okay. Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing because like it does seem to be very foundational to Mishlei, so it's funny because like I'm having this idea of like not exactly David's question about what this is doing in Mishlei, but like it does seem to be, it seems very foundational. It's not a problem. I'm just like observing it. Yeah. Okay. All right. I hear the idea. All right. That's good. And I think the difference between your idea and Isaiah's idea is what? I don't know. They do go
The
together.
first half is
Yeah,
The
I
first
think
half is different, right?
actualization. Like I wasn't
That's true. Right.
actualizing anything.
Right. That's true. Right. So Isaiah's is really just only talking about the foolish decision, and Rivki's is really talking about the decision, the Chacham's decision and the fool's decision. Right. There's two different things. Yeah. I wonder if that's a move that Mishlei makes for the deliberate ambiguity as well. I don't know if I've seen this before, but like it is interesting because these do get down to the same message, but Isaiah's first half is really like spelling out the premise of the second half, and Rivki's is spelling out the good decision. Yeah, interesting. All right, both are good ideas though. Okay, next is my dad.
Okay, I just have a comment on the first half.
Yeah.
Lust is there's twofold way of looking at lust. Lust is a feeling, a desire, strong desire. It's also a behavior where you carry out that desire.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the first half of the pasuk and saying, what this is trying to say is that not just stopping the behavior of lust, but no longer have the feeling of desiring the lustful thing. That brings sweetness to the soul.
Uh-huh. Right. So the sweetness comes from
conquering the desire and the feeling.
State where you no longer have the desire. Right. Yeah. Okay. That is a different that's a different one than Rivki's conquering, because Rivki is really talking about Rivki's is talking about vis-a-vis the pleasure, and you're talking about like being free from the desire, right? The freedom.
You may not engage in the behavior, but you'll still have the desire, as part of your as something you have to live with. If you can overcome both the behavior and the desire, which when you're dealing with drug addicts, this is what you're dealing with, addressing their craving when they no longer crave the drug. That really is a sweetness to the soul.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I think the idea that I want to say in the Mefarshim is going to be most similar to that one out of all of them so far. Okay, so we'll I'll hopefully supplement that. Okay, Yosef.
Okay, so I was I was thinking that like I'm gonna start the second half, and I think the first half like an introduction of like the concept of what it is, but I think it's talking about there's this certain like type of person who I like encounter in my school a lot. There's a lot of kids like this, where like the concept of like abstaining from pleasure when they're used to it, or when they don't have like a framework of like the secondary nature of pleasure, very much makes when that idea of abstinence is very foreign to them, and therefore they engage in certain things that often aren't great. And so I think the idea is that is really trying, the first half is trying to address what the nature of that is, of these people, of that there's a certain type of person who really just the concept of like abstaining from pleasure for all of its reasons that like we try and make it secondary to our mind. It's very foreign to them, because I think that at its root, I think what it's addressing is that like someone had a good point, is that like whenever you're trying to explain something to someone, like why you're doing something, it usually comes down to one of two things: either because it makes sense and there's a truth to it, or because it feels good for you. Right? I think Terav not Lenafesh, I don't know which translation this fits best with, but I think it's saying that maybe it's immediate. But I think it's saying that there's really like between a person's like rationale of how they operate, immediate pleasure, I mean, it might be immediate pleasure, it might just be pleasure, is one of just like the most like intimate deciding factors in that. And so that creates and so that really result, and without like the application of the mind, which is kind of what the seal is, the idea of being sor meira, of like a type of abstinence, not like total abstinence, but just like abstaining sometimes, becomes very foreign, and it becomes totally like crazy to them. Like the example I was thinking of is just like there's like some kids who are not as religious, and like when the Rabbeinu talk about like being shomer negia, right? Like that concept to them just seems impossible. Like they just like but Rebbe, like that doesn't make it like it.
Lost your connection there. No. All right. Hopefully you come back. So my comment on that so far is I hear what he's talking about. I'm not yet seeing a distinct idea from Rivki and Isaiah from like the approach that they're taking. So I'm not exactly sure. I mean, the second half does sound like what they're saying. I'm not exactly seeing what Yosef is doing with the first half. Oh, he's back visually.
Hello,
yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I was just saying that I hear what the type of personality you're describing in the second half. I don't quite get what the first half is saying to you, according to your approach. Oh, you're frozen again. I don't know if your audio is frozen.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hold on, let me move. Give me a second.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you because I don't know how much dead time we're going to have here. Okay, so I'll come back. Yeah, Isaiah, what do you want to say?
I have a different read.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
David, yeah.
I think maybe this actually, some of what Yosef was saying remind me of it, but okay. So I'll start with the second half. The abomination of fools is turning from evil, or that really turning from evil is an abomination to fools. And that I think when people do foolish things, they have to convince themselves and be certain that this is a good idea. I think something to what Yosef was just saying. And from that, so it would be like a crazy thing to actually turn away from this, because that is admitting that which I find the value is actually not of value. And then I think the first half is really then saying it in a very Mishleic way that okay, desire broken will be sweet to the soul. Insofar as when you are able to break away from these desires and not be thinking irrationally and really switch over to thinking Mishleically, that will wind up being sweet to the soul, because you can now start making good Mishleic decisions which you were not blinding yourself from beforehand, as you were before.
Okay, can you just say the first half again? I was still trying to catch up with the second half.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. Then what the first half is really saying is that desire broken will be sweet to the soul. And so far as Mishleically, once you have broken this desire or these desires that you have, then you are now able to actually start thinking Mishleically, because you're not forcefully blinding yourself.
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay.
So
the first half is saying that once you break your desire, then you'll be able to start thinking Mishleically, because you won't be forced into automatically like rationalizing every pleasure-seeking behavior you engage in. Okay. I feel like an example would be really good for this. Could we come up with an example? both halves. There's the second half is the person who's in the grips of, they're in this pattern where what actually propels them to make decisions is just immediate pleasure, and then they have to come up with some way to a value system to rationalize that. But then they're really locked in that value system, and the value system is one that's programmed to just automatically identify the pursuit of immediate pleasure as the right decision. So we know, I'm just talking this through. So in Mishlei, we know that there are cases where, there are many cases where making the, choosing the immediate pleasure is not the right decision. So, but you're not going to be able to even get to that point unless you can tame the desire to the extent where you can consider separating from it. Then you're going to be able to think, okay, well, should I give into the desire now, or should I avoid it because of some long-term consequence or because of some long-term benefit? And then you can actually get the real pleasure.
I had an example for the first half.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe someone who's kind of obsessed with making money.
So
So
okay, that's good.
while they're obsessed with making money, they can't help but continually think about that and make decisions based off of that desire to obtain more money.
Yeah.
And that leads to painful situations where they're compromising other parts of their life. So when they unhook from that situation, so then they're in a sweet state of being able to make choices in a more free kind of way.
Okay, right. That's a great example, right? So I have written here, someone who's obsessed with making money can't help but make all their decisions based on that. But once you tame that desire and are able to step back and say, wait a minute, should I go for this deal? And slave away to make that money? Or should I use that time and energy for a different pursuit, which would be more worthwhile? It's this will unlock a path to to provide the soul with maximum sweetness. Okay, that's a good idea. I like that. That's a distinct idea from what we have so far. Okay, hopefully Yosef has better reception now. So I'm gonna ask Yosef the question. So what I was saying before, Yosef, I don't know if you could hear me, which was, I get the type of personality you're talking about in the second half, the people who they can't even comprehend the idea of abstaining from pleasure. And I just did not see what the first half was saying. So if you could repeat that.
Oh, so I think the first half, I think is very similar to what David's saying, but I think it's trying to speak onto human nature, that I think it's a warning about how closely tied pleasure is to how fundamental it is to our existence, as an animal. And it's saying that it's this very sweet, immediate thing to us, and that is really a component of us. And to the degree where it's what David said, it can define your framework. That's why it's that's why it's to avos, right? It's an abomination, because it's totally against the definition of his framework of really since Tiv is so intertwined with what man is, it can become his framework. Yeah. And then it's totally impossible for him to break out of that to the degree that it's toava, right? It's abomination, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what it's saying. I'm just basing off what David's saying. It's really, I think we're describing the same thing of a guy, his whole framework can be defined by this because it's such a part of what man is. And I think it's a warning in general about the nature of the Sahara, that really it can totally take over a person's life, right? And I think it has the examples we said before, but also just a general warning of where taiva can bring you to.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good. That's good. I think it does fit in really well with what I was saying as well. All right. Good. All right. Ayala.
Okay. This is not such a new point. It's more of a different reading, but saying very similar thing to what Yosef was saying.
Yeah.
So what I was starting by thinking about was the second half of, well, first of all, I'm using Sadia Gaon's reading.
Okay.
And then the second half, that the abomination of fools is turning from evil, or fools abhor turning from evil. Just Sor Meira sounds like a thing that everyone would want to do. Who wouldn't want to turn from evil? Obviously, it's so obvious. No one would want to go towards evil. So I think it's like talking to someone from the outside who like sees a fool doing these like obviously stupid things and is like, why are they doing this? Why are they like abhorring, turning away from evil? Like, why are they like literally stepping right into it? And then the new point that the pasuk is adding is saying the reason that they're doing that is because desire, and then everything about what everyone else is saying, like Yosef's idea that it like desire kind of like tints their entire framework or worldview or whatever, and it blinds them. And it's like a warning to people who are not yet a fool and are not yet making these like crazy decisions, but do have desires, and it's like warning them that like this is where desires can lead you, even though they seem sweet.
Okay. All right, that's good. So I have here turning from evil sounds like something that everyone would want to do. From an outsider's perspective, the fact that concealing the poor turning away from evil is ridiculous. The audience is someone who is not yet, I guess, who has not yet devolved into a full-blown seal, but could fall into that trap. And this is warning him what he could become based on this very basic element of human nature. Yeah, I mean, it's like going back to the drug analogy. I mean, when you see like I mean, I've only seen this in movies and TV shows. Like you see like people who are like, meth addicts or heroin addicts who like are engaging in completely self-destructive behavior in every other area of their lives. They are not turning away from Ra, and like that is the result. That is the perspective you get. Like, why are you? Why would anybody want to be doing this? And the answer is they don't want to be doing this, but they're pursuing pleasure, and that leads them to the state where they're incapable of turning away from Ra because it's so abhorrent. Yeah, that's good. Yosef, is your hand up from before, or you had another point?
Residual hand.
Okay, residual hand. Okay. So these are all good ideas. And it's interesting that all of our ideas are very similar tonight. I feel like that's not usually the case. So hopefully that's a sign that we're on the right track here. Let's do this. Let me read. I actually forgot to put the Metzudas David. Whoopsie. Sorry, Metzudas David. Let's see what the Metzudas David says, and then I want to do Rבינו Yona, and then we have a special guest who we don't usually have. And not only is it a special guest, but it will lead to a Pesach idea. And that's by accident. I did not line this up with that in mind.
Wait, can you add in like a gematria and a parsha reference? And
yeah. Then I get the trifecta. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see what the Metzudas David says. Okay, hold on a second here. Metzudas David says, and I want to do Metzudas David, even though I haven't read him yet because of that broken desire thing. Okay. So Tavania. Kasher nishbra tavas ha'adam be'inyane haguf, when the lust of a person in bodily matters is broken, az terov lenefesh hamaskeles, then it will be sweet to the rational soul. Ki az tazkil, because then it will comprehend. This might be what W was saying. Avaha Rashayim, but the wicked, davar ta'uv hu lahem. I don't know why he puts in the wicked. It just says fools. It is an abominable matter to them. Kasher hima sari min hara. When they turn away from evil. Mechesron hataiva. Out of lack of desire. Ki yoser yechpetzu shitavu la'avera v'yasua, for they have a greater desire to lust for a transgression and commit it. What is he saying? I don't even know if I'm translating this right. Kashahima sari min hara mechasron hatava. I'm going to use the word lust here because he uses chafetz. He must mean is it abominable matter for them to turn away from evil. No, what is it? When they turn away from evil out of a lack of lust. Oh, okay. I think what he's saying. Anyone pick up on what he's saying? It's an interesting point here. I think what he's saying is like this. So he's saying, so the first half is very similar to what we've said, which is, so the first half is saying that there is a unique pleasure you get when you free, and it's kind of a combination of David's idea and my dad's idea. When you free the rational soul from the bonds of the lust and enable it to engage in its activity of rational thinking. I don't know if this is like as a means to more pleasure or as an end in and of itself. He doesn't really say. He's just saying that you'll taskiel. Okay. So that part is an old idea, I think. Okay, but old, like we've said that, right? Okay, but what he's saying for the second half is, and again, I don't know why he goes to the wicked, but he's saying that the idea of being in a state of broken desire where you have no lust is abhorrent to the wicked, because they would rather be in the grips of lust so that they can do an avera and get the pleasure. Okay. And the example that comes to my mind is my friend Josh Licht. I remember told me that he was once arguing, this is a long time ago, he was once arguing with someone, would you rather be in a state of fantasy or not in a state of fantasy? And this guy was saying, I'd rather be in a state of fantasy. And Josh argued with him. He said, but in order to be in a state of fantasy, you have to be not getting what you want, right? You can only fantasize about something when you don't have it. And so he was saying, like you're basically saying you'd rather be in a state of constant pain, and this guy was saying, yeah, and so I think that's how the Russia thinks about lust, is that like, and desire, this, like, let's say, like, just use an extreme example, like to look at like a Buddhist monk who has no desire for worldly pleasures, that's like a horrendous thing to him. Like, what kind of a life is that? Like he can't imagine, like he can't, because the satisfaction. See, what he's opening, the Metzudas is opening up a new level. He's saying like this. He's saying there is the I'm just going to talk it out for a second. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, there's the satisfying of desire. That's the middle of the pasuk that the pasuk is not mentioning according to him. Then there's he's not identifying who it is, but we'll call him the chacham or the tzaddik or whatever, who overcomes the desire itself and is now in a state where he is not a slave to that desire anymore, and he can pursue whatever the mind pursues and get that enjoyment or whatever. But then there's the Russia, who not only does he want the desires, but he can't stand the idea of being someone who doesn't have the desires, because he would rather have this craving so that he could get the desire of fulfilling it than to not have the craving at all. That's what Metzudas is highlighting. Yeah, Ariel?
Okay, so I want to go on record and say that this is what I wanted to say.
Okay, good.
All right. Now, I have a few questions. I mean, I left out the word avera. I'm not sure why avera has to play into this, but
I also don't understand why it has
whatever. But I have two questions. One, why are we going under the premise that having desires is a bad thing? Because you could have a desire and channel it in a way where it is appropriate. And two, why are we going under the premise that the chacham just conquers his desires by just, I don't know, because we're human, we satisfy. I mean, it's just what we do. The question is what you do with it, So anyway, but everything else.
Okay, yeah. I'm missing. What's the difference between the first two questions?
I guess there is no difference.
Okay,
right.
Whatever.
In my mind.
Yeah. Okay. So I do think. So it's a good question, right? So I don't think. Okay. So
because you made a distinction, and
yeah.
What I originally wanted to say was that there's nothing wrong with satisfying your desire, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. Even if you have desires, it's not a bad thing.
Right. So that's why I meant what I'm saying. I think he is talking about a different level than what we've been talking about, because he's talking about someone who he's saying breaking the desire means that you no longer have a desire for those kinds of things, like physical pleasures.
Say that one more time. Breaking the desire.
Admittedly, this is not a very Mishlei thing, the way that we learn Mishlei, but he is talking about he's saying that it's kasher nishbara tavas adam b'inyane haguf. Talking about a person who no longer has desires for physical pleasures. Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
it can't mean after you fulfill it.
No, because he's dovka learning it means breaking it. And he also talks about chesron hatava, lacking desires. Right. So I think the answer to your question is there are three levels. Okay. There's like there are three levels. Okay. Actually, there's 4 levels. Okay, let's split this up. Okay, 4 levels. Okay, so there's the Russia who again, I don't know where he gets the Russia from. Let's just say the Russia can't tolerate even the idea of being without desires, bodily desires. Okay, so then there's the fool who has bodily desires and is in the grips of them, and just like can't help but satisfy them, no matter what the consequences. Okay, so then there is the chacham, who let's just say like tames or channels them in a manner that he can satisfy them without harming himself. Okay, and then I'm going to just call this the tzaddik. I know he's not really labeling this. Is someone who has transcended, the real proper word for this is the kadosh, right? Someone who has transcended the whole realm of bodily desires and is interested in the pleasures of the soul. Okay, so Ariel, you're talking about this, and you're saying, what's wrong with being a chacham? And the answer is there's nothing wrong with being a chacham in the sense that is if you could satisfy your desire without getting consequences and without getting addicted to it, then that's fine. But if there is a whole realm of other desires and other pleasures that are higher, which are pleasures of the soul, so then there is something wrong because you're missing out on a whole world of desire. It's like the Rambam's mashal of the king when he was a 5-year-old boy liked playing ball in the street, but once he's tasted the pleasures of being a king, and if you told him, hey, do you want to give up being a king so you can go like play ball in the street? He'd be like, what are you, crazy? Like, why would I give up this great pleasure to do that? So same thing with a person who's involved in pleasures of the soul. To him, the notion of like giving up, the notion of like, investing his energy in pleasures of the body is just like a ridiculous idea. Yeah,
right. So your question now on him is, why does he use the word Russia?
I'm just saying, like, I see you. If you ask me where our pasuk is talking about, I'm much more comfortable saying that the pasuk is talking about the fool and the chacham. He's saying really that the pasuk is talking about the Russia and the kadosh.
Right. Yeah. So I was trying to say that.
I can't answer where he's getting it from, by the way, which is that, again, I'm not saying I agree with this Pirush. I think he's getting it from broken taiva. I think your intuition is right, Ariel, is that I don't think in Mishlei we worry about breaking your taiva. And the proof is all over Mishlei, is that he's advocating, here's how you get kavod, here's how you get money. He's just advocating satisfying your taiva in a rational way.
Right. So I have a question, just and I'm asking this to see if we can see how he developed it within. So when you use the example of just started with Josh left and like the fantasy part, right? What propelled you to say that story, like from the Kaddish and Russia part, or from the Fool and the Chacham part?
I got that from the fact that this person who Josh was talking to couldn't fathom a world where he's not in the grips of taiva, and even when she made the argument to him that like, so you're saying you want to be in a state of constant conflict and dissatisfaction, that's really what you want. And the way Rabbi Moskowitz used to express this idea, by the way, is he said that I don't necessarily buy this, but he said that like almost all pleasures is just the removal of pain. So he said, by that logic, if I take itching powder and put it on me and then just scratch it, then like that's the best life because I'm causing myself pain and then removing it by scratching it.
Right. So can I try to show why that would be rishus?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so and I'm actually getting this from a shiur that I heard from Rebbe on the Arba Banim on Pesach.
Okay.
And the question is like why, like with the Russia's response, why is he Russia?
Right.
You know, and it had to do with how he was asking the question. He asked, "Oh, why are you doing all this? Whatever." Long story short, like he's already going in with an assumption, and instead of asking like what you're doing, like trying to understand. And Rebbe says something very interesting, and this is the part that I think is interesting. Is that like rishus can be very subtle, meaning like what he's really doing is being rishus to himself by not allowing himself to get more chachma. So over here also, and it's very subtle. It's not like a huge crazy thing, but over here also, because he's in this conflict, in this fantasy, he's always limiting himself from going further in this world or in terms of whatever. Like it's just limiting him, and and he's doing that to himself, and that in itself is rishus.
Yeah.
So maybe you could say that he's trying. Maybe I don't know. Just
no. So I think that's a good shot. But I want to clarify what was bothering me. Bothering me is not where he's getting. Is not that his idea is inconsistent with rishus. My problem is that the pasuk does not say Russia. It says ksilim. So I don't know why he is making this pasuk to be about a Russia when the pasuk explicitly says ksilim. Yeah, but his idea makes sense, and what you're saying makes sense.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, let's do Rabbeinu Yona, and then I want to show you this Pesach idea, okay? With our special guest. Okay, so Rabbeinu Yona, I also not read Rabbeinu Yona yet. So Rabbeinu Yona says, Belashon avar yomer lenekeva nihiasa uvelashon omed lazachar besagol nekeva nihia b'kamat. Okay, that's grammatical stuff. I'm going to pretend it doesn't matter. V'amar Shlomo alav shalom ki atayva lo terav lenefesh hamisave rak be'odenu hove. So Shlomo said that lust is only sweet to the soul when it is still present, hove, when it's still extant, I guess, extant. Below achare esher avra, but not after it has already passed the nihyasa and has like has been actualized. Okay, so he's learning tava nihyasa, lust that has passed is sweet to the soul, I think. Let's see. Unless he's saying the opposite. Okay. Hanas sha'a v'rega yitavur surmera v'yizdamin achet liadam. Oops. Hold on a second. And because of momentary pleasure, Yitavu surmera, I think he means the fools, will abhor turning away from evil, bihizdamin hachet liadam, when they chance upon an opportunity for sin. The tigbar tavasam, and their lust overpowers them. V'nim shachim lahanasha, and they are drawn into immediate pleasure. V'lo yichushu and they don't worry about harm, the cherpas olam, and eternal disgrace, habaim achrei that come after the moment. Amod v'hizbonin kama sichlusam, pause and contemplate how great is their folly, v'kama tiye shav tamrusam, and how not worth it is their exchange. Okay, that's like an astonishment. This is one of the places that rebukes regarding the idea of turning away from evil when a person chances upon sin and their lust overpowers them. Yeah. Okay. I don't know exactly what he's adding by that last part. Okay. So what's Rabbeinu Yona's idea? while you think about it, I just want to go and do what I always do, is check the good Revina Yona and see if the good Revina Yona says something different. But focus on this this first part. That's where the main idea is coming from. I'll double check this. 13:29. Wait, not 29, 19, 13:19. Okay. Blah blah blah. Amar Shlomo ki atava lo te'erev lenefesh hamisavev rak be'odenu hovev lo achrei asher avra v'nihasa. V'nihata sha'av rega yisavu surmi rab hizdamin hachet le'adam v'tigbar tavasam alav nitmshem l'tan asha lo yichush l'nezek aman v'izban kama siklosim ti'e v'zeh hamina mekos hamlichim kin surmi ra asher hizdamin hachet biad ha'adam v'tigbar. Oh, okay. Put a little dash here. All right, I forget the end part. That's fine. Yes, what's the main idea? Yeah, Isaiah?
Is he saying kind of simply that like the desire like of having a lust like is sweet and draws you into doing actions which like draws a fool into doing actions which are bad, sinful? Meaning like it's the sweet like part of it ends up drawing them into doing things which they don't want to do.
Yeah. Right, but I think he's giving an idea about how, okay, which is, and I'm going to put this in my own language, but I'm not comfortable exactly with how he's translating the pasuk, but I think what he's saying is the way that fools get caught up in the desire is that the desire traps them in a false eternal present, okay, where they can't see that there is a future beyond that. Okay, since desire is only pleasurable in the present. Okay, let me explain what I mean. I feel like we've talked about this in my Koheles students, and we've talked about this in Koheles, that like part of the pleasure is the feeling that it's going to be forever, you know. And the muscle I used to use is like if you've been waiting for like months to go to a certain concert and you're in the concert and like you suddenly realize like, oh, the concert's going to be over in a few hours, that kind of cuts in on the pleasure, you know. Or if you know that this is going to end, you know, if you're on a vacation, there are people who are like, as the vacation is coming to an end, like the fact that it's going to be over impinges on their vacation. Now, why should that be? Like, you know, if they were really enjoying their vacation, they wouldn't actually be thinking about the future. But the answer is because part of the pleasure is the fantasy that this can last forever. And in order to fully enjoy that, you have to like shut out there's a healthy way and there's an unhealthy way. The healthy way is to enjoy what you have in a sameach b'chalko sense. The unhealthy way is to deny the future and to shut it out of your mind. And the problem with that is that it opens you to the consequences, you know? So he's saying, I don't know, maybe that grammatical part was more important than I thought. B'lashon avar yomar l'nekeva nihya sav, b'lashon omed l'zachar b'segol l'nekeva nihya b'kamatz. So he's saying, I think he's translating it as present pleasure is what brings sweetness to the soul. Very similar to Sadigon, okay? And therefore, fools despise, abhor turning from evil. So in other words, like he's saying that fools see, okay, this is a very subtle idea here, but this is a very important idea, is it's not just that the fool says, oh, immediate pleasure and like with long-term pain, or forego immediate pleasure and avoid the long-term pain. I'm going to weigh it out. No, so it's not like the fool's doing that. It's that all he sees is the immediate, and he sees it that way because that's what like brings the pleasure to the soul. He won't let the future in because letting the future in diminishes the pleasure. He just wants to be in this eternal present, you know, of the pleasure. I think this is an example of like a psychological idea from Rabbeinu Yona. I want to think about it some more because I think there's a lot of implications here. Okay, so are we ready for our special guest? Okay, so if you'll look at, let's just go back to previous chapters. Okay, chapter 10, where it all began. Shadal has comments on 2 psukim. Chapter 11, Shadal has comments on 1 pasuk. Chapter 12, Shadal has little comments on 3 psukim. Our chapter, we got a nice chunky Shadal on our pasuk, okay? And it's a good one too. So this is what Shadal says. Shadal says as follows. And this is again very similar to what my dad was saying. Kish adam male tavaso, when a person fulfills his desire, yesh lo hana gedola, he has tremendous pleasure. Ach hachacham einenu eved latavaso, but a chacham is not a slave to his desire. V'hu sar mera, he turns from evil. Af im tie nafsho misavelo zodavar, even if his soul craves that thing. Lo kein aksilim, but this is not true of the fools. Heim avadim latavoseim, they are slaves to their desires. V'to'eva hi lahem lasur mera, it is an abomination for them to turn from evil. Im tie nafsham misavelo, if their souls desire it. Okay, so this is making an argument to Ariel about why would a chacham not want to fulfill his desire, and that's what I was saying that the Metzudas David is saying is yeah, if you can fulfill your desire in isolation without any consequences, so then that's a pleasure, but it's going to bother the chacham that he's a slave to his desire, that and that slavery like limits what he can do with his life, and dictates, like, it closes off certain options. He's compelled towards getting that pleasure, so he's not going to want that. Okay, and what does this have to do with Pesach? I don't think it's too hard to see, but I'll read my favorite sources for this. Is the classic question in Halach Ma'anya is, and this is kind of bordering on drush, but we say Hashta Avde Lashana Haba B'nei Chorin. This year we are slaves, next year we'll be free, right? And the reality is we are not slaves, right now. Okay, like we're not actually like avadim. So there are people who answer by saying like, oh, this is talking about like slavery to the fact that we're in galus, etc. Those are fine answers. My favorite answer is the based on this Mishnah, quote unquote, in Pirkei Avos. And the reason why I'm saying quote unquote is because this is in the 6th parak, which is not technically a Mishnah. This is a brisa. So it says, "Omer Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, v'haluchos maseh elokim hema, v'hamiktav miktav elokim hu charus al haluchos." The tablets were the work of God, and the script was the script of God, charus al haluchos, engraved on the tablets. Al tikri charus ela cherus. Do not read charus, engraved, but rather cherus, free. She'en lacha ben chorin elamisha osik b'talmud Torah. There is no free such thing as a free man, a free person, except one who involves himself in learning Torah. Okay, so the only freedom you can have is learning learning Torah. So the question is, how is that the case? Okay, so again, most concise. There's lots of explanations you can give, but most concise one that I like is the Abrabnel. He says, "Inyano ma shabir ha-philosoph." So the idea of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is what the philosopher explains. I assume he's talking about Aristotle, but I don't know where Aristotle says this. Shehahachna el hadas ina shibud ella avahu cherus. That subordinating yourself to the law, which in our case is to Torah, is not slavery but freedom. Shehadas v'hanhagasa, because the law and its practice, mivim ha'adam el hashlemus hamidosii, brings man to perfection of midos, okay, of character traits. V'lios sichlo ben chorin v'lo eved tavosav, and makes his intellect free and not a slave to his desires. And that's really what the Metzudas David was advertising there, which is that it's true that fulfilling a desire gives you pleasure. Let's go back to the Shadal. It's true that fulfilling a desire gives you great pleasure, but a chacham it realizes that as long as he's compelled to seek those desires, then he's limiting himself. If you can get free of those desires, then and be involved in something that is not this hedonic treadmill of like desire fulfillment, but you could be involved in constant pleasure, which is the world of the mind, which is shirim, which is Torah lishma, which is ovid me'ava. Then that's the place to get to. That's not like this like up and down of physical desires, because the physical world is such that you can't constantly be in a state of fulfilling your desires. But the world of ideas, you can be in a state of constant desire, or at least more constant than the physical. So the chacham will want that, and the fools can't even conceive of that. So I think Shadal's idea is like all the perks of the Metzudas David's idea, but without introducing Rishayim, and I think it's good for Pesach purposes as well. Oh, and just to support what Ariel said, I'll call on you in a second, Rivki, is you could take Rebbe's approach of the Arba Banim, but I think the best route to take for making the argument of the Russia is the alternative version of the Arba Banim, which is the Yushami. Okay, so I've written an article about this, but the Yushami has a slightly different set of question of answers. So one thing is that the Chacham and the Tipesh are switched. Ben Chacham Mahu Omer Maha Euz V'Chukim Mishpatim Shertiva Hashem Elokeinu Osanu Af Ata Emer Lo B'Chozi Gad Yotzi Hashem Mitzrayim Mibeis Avadim. Okay, but here's the one I want to point to. The Ben Russia, what does he say? Maha Avoda Zos Lachem. What is the service to you? Maha Toreach Hazeh She'atem Matrichim Aleinu B'Chol Shana V'Shana. What is this burden that you burden us with each and every year? And the Ritva, actually, let me show you the Ritva, because the Ritva is the one where I first saw this. Okay, for those who don't know, you can have the Mikras Gedolos on Al HaTorah, which not only has all the Perushim of the Rishonim, but it also has so if you do the menu, it's got all the classic Rishonim, but then it also has the Likut from all these other Mefarshim, which means, let's say you do the Likut of Rashi, it means that anytime that the Rashi mentions anything in the Haggadah anywhere else in the Tanakh, or any pasuk that the Tanakh references, it'll bring down the Rashis there. Okay, but let's look at the Ritva, I think is where he brings it down. Is the Ritva on here? Yeah, Ritva. The Rasha says, okay, so what is this burden that you're placing upon us every year? To delay our meal and to delay the rejoicing of the festival. So the Russia, according to the Yerushalmi, is basically just wants the physical pleasures of the Seder, and to him the discussion is just like an obstacle in the way. So I think that's that. I mean, I'm not discounting Rebbe's idea. Rebbe's idea, though, is more of a Russia because of how you relate to like knowledge. But the Yerushalmi is saying it's a Russia in a Mishleic sense, or not a Russia, but a fool in a Mishleic sense of like I can't stand to give up my to delay my meal. Yeah. Okay, so that's Shadal's interpretation. Okay. Rivki, did you have a question? I saw your hand up briefly.
Yeah, but I think if you want to summarize, and then I could ask it, because I think it's more on like the last thing we did. So if you just wanted to summarize.
No, I like the summaries to be as close to the end as possible. So if you want to ask it, yeah.
So my question is, and you'll see why I was saying that. My question is more of like, I guess, a macro question of like that whole concept that Hashem wanted to give the Torah to the world, and then everyone rejected it, and then he gave it to us. But the point is that obviously the ideas of Torah, and that's why like we're quote unquote appointed to be able to teach that certain ideas and values, it's because it's applicable to people and not to specifically Jews.
Right.
Obviously everything, but most of it. So I guess my question is when you're talking about that, it makes me a little sad, just because I feel like so much of the world is the complete opposite of what we're learning. And even within the Jewish community, I'm not exempting us.
Right.
I guess my question is, what's to be done about that? And I know like obviously we have to work on ourselves and like the Jewish community, and you can't necessarily focus on everything. But it is sad to like look at the world today and see that I feel like it's just the complete opposite of all of these ideas.
Right. I mean, the answer is gotta teach Mishlei to the world, these ideas are accessible and to everyone, and that's the great thing about Mishlei is you don't have to sell a new value system, right? Like, okay, this is selling a new value system. I don't think you should teach this pasuk to the world right away, but like most of Mishlei is not trying to break your taivas. It's trying to show you how if you apply chachma, you'll get your taivas, and the Torah's lifestyle, is geared towards a life where you get like the involvement in chachma and you get like a balanced life of moderation and pleasure, without the crazy world of ups and downs of the taivas, so teach it, exemplify it, slowly by slowly, like people will see it, but like it's a uphill battle, and like you said, like the main battlefield is our own people, because our own people don't see it.
Yeah. But I was just gonna, like, I feel like every time I have a conversation about this, whether it's with a Jew or a non-Jew, it's not even an argument, but I guess the philosophy of saying that in Judaism, because people really do see it as oppressive, whether again, and the argument obviously that I always give is that it's really the opposite, that, we all know it. I don't have to say the whole argument, but that's what I always say. And like, it's really the concept of this whole idea. And I feel like it doesn't get across. So I'm wondering if it's
right. That's exactly why Shlomo had to write Mishlei, because the Torah itself wasn't getting the ideas across, and you have to bring it down to the particulars, in everyday decision making, and then build the bridges or link the chains, as Shlomo says with the pulley system, link the chains from there to the mitzvah system. For example, like, I'm not saying this is easy sell, but like, after showing people through countless Mishlei pasukim about how like giving into, someone who has this philosophy of the seal of like pleasure is the ultimate good, once you realize how many like consequences that will have, you realize, oh, that's not a wise decision-making thing. And then you show, oh, that's what, ma'achalos asurus and yisuri bia. That's what the food prohibitions, the sexual prohibitions are designed to do. That's the whole value of kedusha. And then you show that that's the regimen that the Torah is trying to put on you, and it is then, it's like it's like a Karate Kid moment of the, like, I thought that this was an oppressive thing that's holding me back from what I want. But once you show me that, like, the life of taiva is not the life that I want because it brings consequences, and then you show that the Torah lifestyle is designed to, like, develop you out of that, then you see the link. But it's a very long developmental process.
Yeah.
We haven't yet been able to mass market Mishlei. Yeah. Okay, so we'll summarize now. So we had very many related ideas. So I'm going to do my best to summarize. So we had Isaiah's idea, which followed directly from Sadigon. First half of the pasuk is telling you that once you actualize the desire, it feels good. And that's all the fool can see. And therefore, turning away is like turning away from the good. And why do we need to be told this? Because if this is an audience that is, that you're dealing with a fool, you should realize, no, the fool's not even going to be able to see the notion of turning away from the good, from pleasure as a possibility. So don't think he engages in the cost-benefit analysis. And if it's talking to you who could become a fool, then you have to realize that you could become this type of person. And I think this is really where, okay, well, I'm not going to try to put this in a new order. I'm just going to go in this order here. Okay, Rivki said that the pasuk is about conquering the desire, which means either, it basically means mastering yourself so that you can engage in the desire in a healthy way instead of an unhealthy way. When you do that, your soul will be in a better state of enjoyment, and the ksilim are like blocked from that, and from that level of enjoyment, and therefore you would do well to not, give into your ksilish ways and like, go on that downslide. Then we got David's idea, which is that that the first half is telling you that once you break your desire and gain access to the pleasures of the soul, the rational soul, then you can once you break desire, then you'll gain access to the pleasures of the rational soul, either the higher level pleasures that Metzudas David was talking about or alluding to, like being involved or in pleasures of the soul, or just being able to think mishleically about the pleasures of the body, but the mishleic fool can't even think about that because he can't even like resist the desire for a second. And Yosef was saying that is that the reason for that is because pleasure is so much of a part of our nature that it's like, Chazal say that the Yetzer Hara gets a 13-year head start on the Yetzer Tov. You can't even you don't even have that part of you that really can come online until much later in life. Okay, then Ayala mentioned that this is really a good way of like showing the ridiculousness and the self-destructiveness of a fool from the outside. Like, he doesn't want to turn away from evil. Who would want that? Well, if you hook yourself to that ksil lifestyle, you're going to end up becoming that in certain areas, if not in everything. Metzudas David was saying this idea that the Russia can't tolerate the idea of a life where you've broken the desire. whereas the kadosh person has transcended the realm of desire, and he's in the realm of the intellect. Rabbeinu Yonah says that the psychology of pleasure is that it locks you into the present, and you can't even think about the future because that would diminish the present pleasure. And then we had Shadal's idea, which is that satisfying your pleasure is good, but if you are a chacham, you'll realize I don't want to be a slave, so you'll work on breaking that slavery to desire. Okay, fundamental ideas in psychology and Mishlei here, not as particular as our usual Mishlei pasuk. Not even talking about a particular decision-making scenario here. Yeah, all right, that was good. Let's just look at the calendar really quickly. So next week we will be doing our Sedarim. The week after that we will be finishing up Yom Tov, and then the 6th is probably of May is probably our next scheduled Mishlei shiur. So until then, have a good Chag Kasher v'Sameach, and see you later. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.